You know, do you want to share how to participate in the virtual dam, or shall I? Because I can just read what would have been on the slide.
I can share. Let me see if I can pull up the slide though. Sorry about this. This is the first time this has ever happened.
That's what we always hear.
1 second.
It's typical for Zoom though, so that's okay. I think everyone's patient with this.
But Dave will be sharing his slides, and there you go. And after the presentation, so here we see, after the presentation, those of you that are panelists will be able to, you know, unmute yourself and ask your question or share a comment. And those of you that may be attendees, you then, it says here, you look at the chat feature, you'll be able to ask your questions, or you can raise your hand, which Phil should be able to see, and he can unmute you so that you can ask your questions. And for callers in, for each caller, the moderator will announce the last 4 digits of the phone number and unmute them one by one. And if you're having any technical assistance, the Q&A tool is there for you. So I think that, unless there's anything else, you heard Anthony Kopak. He is the city planner who works with the Southside Flats. And he is, in addition to this meeting being recorded, he's also jotting down the questions and then the answers or the comments, so that we have that as a part of the documentation of this meeting. So we're ready for you, Dave.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, thanks everyone for joining in here. I'm going to share my screen, if that's okay. Let's see. Yeah, but thank you all for joining in here. This project is at 1209 East Carson Street, which is adjacent to the Urban Tap. Just to give you some, some idea of where this is. This is the first of our meetings, so we'll also be going in front of the local advisory committee to discuss the design with them, and then moving forward, once we've gotten everyone's comments and feedback, onto the Historic Review Commission. So this is a storefront in East Carson Street, so it obviously requires historic district approval. The first slide you see right here, well, I'll give you just an overview. What John DeMauro, who is one of the participants in the meeting, he's the owner of this project, and what he's planning on doing is sort of extending the Urban Tap over into this space, but creating an altogether different concept. So this will be more of a cantina style restaurant, and will have its own storefront entrance here. This is all one property. This has all been consolidated. So all of these properties that we'll be discussing today are one single lot. So as you can see from this first slide, this is the location. This is at just in the middle of the 1200 block of East Carson Street. Urban Tap is sort of this 3-story building, and then this 2-story building. That's what exists now as the Urban Tap. This was formerly a salon, and this is the subject property we're talking about today in terms of the storefront. So, and then this is the side elevation of that property. So this property abuts the city parking lot as well. This is a view of the rear of the property from that city parking lot. So we'll be talking about some work we want to do in this area as well. Pardon me. So this is the sort of the overall elevation of the 3 properties, the Urban Tap and El Dorado properties. This is Urban Tap. This is Urban Tap. This is the entrance of the Urban Tap. And this is the subject property we just looked at. So what we're proposing to do is to remove, I'm going to bounce around a little bit, so if anyone wants to stop me and ask me to go back, feel free. We're planning on removing all of this storefront material that's in here. This was, I don't know when exactly this was done, decades ago, but what we're planning on doing is removing this plywood and ornamented storefront in here and replace the storefront essentially where it is. So the doors will remain in this plane right here. This storefront will remain where it is, but we'll be stripping this clean and going down to brick. There's brick underneath here and some stone, as you can see. We're going to see what's underneath there with some selective demolition. So we're the first to bring up the fact that what we're presenting today may, once we do some of this demolition, get changed slightly, but we'll be able to give you exactly what our intention is here. This is the sort of the across the street view of what we're planning on doing. And we're planning on putting in a more traditionally proportioned signboard that would go across here at approximately the location where the original signboard would have been before they covered that over. What they've done in this edition is sort of box all of this in and create a bulkhead in here so that we don't really know what's signboard and what's cornice in that scenario. We're trying to make a more prominent signboard here, and then in the remaining space that's below that, that was sort of paneling and etc. We want to put in a tiled panel here that would reflect the nature of the cantina restaurant inside. So it would be sort of a Spanish looking tile, but would also sort of fill this in with maybe a little more traditional proportions than what exist right now. And then below this point, we would be keeping door locations, but replacing the entire storefront that's underneath here with new doors, wooden glass doors, wood and glass storefront material, and a granite base. So that would be within this area here. So we'd be removing the, this fluted column here and replacing it with sort of more traditional storefront proportioning with a granite base that's a little bit more traditional and more in keeping with what exists on the adjacent properties. So this is just a blow up of that, and I've got actually two of them. The reason I did two really is just to show some dimensions and to clarify some things. But granite base, wood storefront, wood columns, glass panel here, so this door exists and goes up to the second floor, the upper floors. This would be the entrance door into the cantina right here. And I'll keep going back to this photograph here. So this door goes into the first floor space. This door goes up to the upper floor apartments. Along with these, we're proposing some signage. This would be the signboard sign, sort of the proportions and the design of the signboard sign. We also are proposing a blade sign that would project from the building in this area right here. So that black bar right there represents the front elevation of this blade sign. So moving along to this side elevation, one of the things that we would like to talk to you guys about, would like for you guys to consider, is the idea of painting where there was an original ghost sign. So there was an original ghost sign up in this area. One of the things that Mr. DeMauro would like to do is potentially paint something where this ghost sign is. Something that would relate to his business, although not necessarily signage, maybe signage, and we can just discuss it. One of the things we wanted to come in front of you guys today and talk about was your receptiveness to painting where there was an original ghost sign. Let's see, I'll continue back. Then the other portion of this from the parking lot side is we would like to install some decorative fencing and a beam along the parking lot sign. And I'll move back to this photograph here. That's along this wall here. So what the ultimate intention is to turn this back area into a dining patio off the back of these restaurants. So instead of having, you know, dumpsters along here, there would be seating and dining along there. So one of the things we wanted to do was sort of make it so that it's not accessible by someone just hopping up over this wall and into the back patio space. So what we're proposing is a series of brick low piers with steel beam and columns, and then we'd have some lighting on that as well, and would have some infill fencing. So that is what's represented here. So just a series of brick piers with some infill fencing and steel column and beam. This is just some blow-ups of that ghost sign. And this is just a color scheme. We're looking at a specific tile that would fit in here. These tiles would be within this space, and this is the tile we're looking at. And then we would have, the majority of the storefront would be this burgundy color with just the surrounds around. I'm sorry, I hope this doesn't make everyone seasick me going back and forth like this, but just the frame around the doors and windows being in that gold color. So the bulk of it being that burgundy color that you see on this sheet. This is just a section through there. So just showing some of the proportions of that storefront. So that is the front portion. That is the portion of this project that goes with the Carson Street elevation. There is then also another portion of this which is along the rear, and this is in plan. This is Bedford Square. So the storefront is out here. This piece right here is what I'm calling the proposed expansion. This is what we just looked at here, and this is Carson Street. But around Bedford Square, opposite this area where we are showing these piers, these brick piers and fencing, opposite that, we are looking at putting in a dumpster enclosure and an entrance in here so that we can have sort of its own separate exterior entrance. Obviously, these days with the pandemic as it is, you know, hopefully things getting better towards the summer, but hopefully also having giving these guys an opportunity to have some outdoor space, which of course obviously is nice to have these days, because that's really where they can you know, get some people out there, and it can improve their cash flow a little bit. This is a plan of what we're talking about. So just a brick enclosure here. We're talking about some metal gates with an arch and a brick pier here. And this may help. This is probably a little easier to see. So this would be the entrance gate that we're talking about, with a little signage piece with a beam and brick piers. And then this would be the area for collecting the garbage. Obviously, no matter what, we have to be able to collect the garbage for these 3 restaurants. And as I mentioned before, we had those sitting, as you can see in that photograph, you know, we've got those sitting back along this, this area here towards the parking lot. We wanted to enclose those instead of just having those sit out. So that's the purpose for enclosing this. And we're talking about new stained wood gates, brick pier with stone cap or precast concrete cap, steel gates that would open whenever the rear court was open, and a little sign over top of that. So that's a lot, I know. So I'll be happy to field any questions. I'm sure there's lots of questions, and I'll field questions, and hopefully we can all be up to speed on this then.
So I think first, if there's anyone from the local review committee who would like to speak, I think you guys are are the experts as we look at the facade. And so if you had comments, I think we'd appreciate hearing them.
All right, Bob Russ here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Hi, folks. Hi, David. Hi, John.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
I appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so a couple of things here. We've kind of looked at these initially and got your presentation. So I think there's a whole bunch of kind of maybe zoning questions that aren't the purview of the LRC. So the LRC is really interested in the historic district guidelines.
Mhm.
So I'll make my comments based on those. But I think there may be questions, hopefully others will jump in and maybe talk about some of the zoning and or building application process that kind of run into this. So two things. One, we would consider these two separate projects because we think the one on Carson Street is one building and then the Bedford Square property is another property. It's separate. I don't know if you guys have merged those into one type of lot that we would consider as one. I don't know if you can address that, David.
Yeah, we did consolidate all of these properties, so it is technically one address. But I mean, from
Okay.
from a design standpoint, obviously they can be looked at separately. We did that because, well, for a number of reasons, including some of those building code issues.
Got it. Okay, so if that's the case, then procedurally, I guess that might say that it's one project for the HRCs and for us to consider. So we'll break it into two because they're sort of two separate issues. So let's talk about the storefront since you have that up. So if you go back through Google Street Views to 2000, I think 14 or 13, you'll find an image before this storefront was done. So for everyone's benefit, that storefront is not original, obviously, and has been crazily altered over the years. So, but back through Google Street Views in around 2012, 2013, the old facade, old storefront was there, and part of it was removed. So you could see that there are parts of the original storefront hidden and probably behind that current storefront. So the 2 points there are great that you're changing it, John and David, thank you, because there's nothing about that storefront that's worth keeping and preserving. What's behind it is what we're really interested in. So if you're up on Google Street View up there on the left, the smaller view, if you click up there somewhere,
Does that
you
look
can go
like the
back
one?
through time.
Yeah. That's it.
Okay.
If you can zoom in on the panel that's missing there.
Mm-hmm.
So you're uncovering the masonry piers on each side of the storefront, which is great, but they're not brick, they're stone. And you can sort of see one peeking out there, and even on this view, you can sort of see at the corner of the storefront nearest to us, the kind of 6 or 8 inches of stone riding up the edge of the side wall there. So those piers are all stone masonry, and they have that kind of, here it's painted actually, that's the first time I've seen that, have a recessed panel kind of decorative profile to them.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd want those uncovered and take a look at them and try and bring those back and strip them down and get back to the original stone piers. And what you're seeing also is those piers come up to what would have been the top of the transom lights. And in that older 2013, 2012 image with part of the storefront removed, you'll see there are excellent pieces of the old transom there above the openings there. You see it next to that little stone decorative pier. So that was all, clear glass windows or some type of glass windows, transom across that. And above it, you can see remains of parts of trim molding that are original, and at least the blocking for the signboard and the cornice that probably was up there just tucked in underneath the second floor windows. So you see all that brown kind of blocking, that's wood set into the brick facade that would have been grounds for putting decorative trim and a signboard and a cornice. So I guess what we're getting to is there's pieces of the original storefront and original parts of the building there. Certainly for the stone piers, we want those exposed and reconditioned if possible. And then in your design, rather than a tile, kind of being added. See if we can pull back and try and restore some type of, transom panel, glass panel system that, could mimic that, or somehow let's do a little research and pull that back and see what remains. That can be, either recreated if there's enough material there to understand what those profiles were, but just understand the storefront is seriously altered, and to try and bring it back to a step that's closer to what was there would be beneficial and sort of desirable from our point of view. I think the other point here too is, that storefront steps back 3 feet, and that's kind of an aberration. That's kind of a weird change that was made at some point along the way. It looks like 2014, 2013 is when that current storefront was done. But that setback, here in this photo shows you that was established even earlier, maybe predates the district. So we could talk about keeping it, but I just want to ask if you and John would consider pulling the storefront back out to the street facade and picking up the extra 3 feet, or whatever, and reestablishing the storefront right there on the front plane of the building, and not having that recess.
And
Food for thought.
Sure,
we can talk about this in more detail if you guys can come to us separately,
absolutely.
and we can work through all this stuff. But these are sort of the initial comments I'm getting back from everybody.
Sure, that's understandable. And this picture here is, I don't mean to interrupt, I'm sorry. This is 2007, and that's the original, that's where that is in 2007.
Yeah,
so I don't know if
but that's definitely not what it was, way
Right,
back when that building was built.
Oh yeah, right, for sure.
I mean, the upper 2 stories of this building are beautiful. I mean, really intact and done well. And everything you're sort of suggesting. So I guess to stay with this point, on the upper stories, in the current condition, it looks like the 2nd floor brick was painted, but the upper story, 3rd story, is not painted.
Correct.
Our hope would be, our suggestion would be to try and strip back the painted 2nd floor and get back to the original brick and stone finishes. So right there, you can see the 2nd floor lintels are painted white. The 3rd floor are not. They're original unpainted masonry. Anything we can do to roll that back a little bit, and rather than repaint it again, to strip it down to the original materials and have them unpainted would be our preference and suggestion. And then some of your other maneuvers, again, I think it's just sort of, can you merge some of your concepts to what is there and salvage or recreate the original excellent kind of materials and historic fabric that is in that storefront. And just, we can talk through that in more detail, how that could be accomplished. But I think there's outright, as your design is now, we would not support that, because it sort of removes a non-conforming or an odd kind of storefront and replaces it with another kind of non-conforming or odd storefront. Can we bring a bit more of the original design back into play and save as much of that as possible, and then work with that to reestablish the storefront in keeping, with what would have been on that building originally.
So specifically more towards moving this out towards the face is the...
That's a bigger move. I understand the complications with that, but that would really be what's appropriate. If you're going to spend that kind of money and you're kind of changing so many other pieces of that are shown in their drawings, changing doors, changing windows, changing frames, why not pick up the additional interior space, really, and bring that facade back out to the street face?
Sure.
Is an opportunity. Now, you may have a recessed vestibule and entrance, and the other thing is you're kind of stuck with these 2 entrances. Would it be helpful to you just to narrow it down to 1 entrance, sort of like the property right next door, and have more storefront glass? And what would that do for John in the business, operationally, interior-wise? Is there a play to be made there? Sort of a suggestion or a thought.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something, obviously when we originally looked at this, the idea of bringing a storefront out to the face was, it was sort of the obvious choice. But, just to to be honest here, with the way the economy has gone for restaurants, key is, John, I'm speaking for John here, we're trying to keep the existing structure and sort of framing, et cetera, as much intact as possible.
Okay.
We're going to just save him some money. So that, I mean, just that doesn't mean we're not, we're certainly willing to keep discussing all this stuff. So,
Yeah.
but that's just so that, that's where we were coming from with that.
Okay.
Sort of,
Yeah, let's have a larger conversation to that. But I think to the point is, if you cannot have a solid transom with the tile and come back to some glazing or some type of more transparency, that was more in keeping with what's behind all this stuff and cover some of that material, and certainly on the stone piers. And I think that's sort of, minimum base, recommendation is that, that's just I wouldn't say an error, but it's just sort of as you uncover this, you'll find those stone piers are there. And I know you guys would agree that it's obviously cheaper just to clean them up and
Sure.
use them. So that was just kind of, until we found this photo on Google, we didn't realize exactly what was there.
Yeah,
so
and
that's all.
We did have every intention of doing this selective demolition to sort of see what exists there before we move forward. Not sure how much of this is there or not. I just don't, I've just seen several times where, something when in the process of doing this, which is sort of bizarre. It's bizarre. So I'm not sure what they did. And we're just sort of
I'm
looking,
with you.
Yeah, just sort of looking at what we would do if nothing existed anymore, because I think, there's sort of maybe a 50-50 chance that that's been messed up.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah. Let's, take it apart piece by piece a little bit, and let's uncover that and take a look and then have a discussion.
Sure.
And kind of go. So I guess what we're saying is sort of, can we merge a little bit of what's there, if it still exists, and then what you're proposing, and what can you live with, and we'll find a happy medium.
Sure.
And then at the second floor, if you could consider leave it alone or strip it back to the original brick and masonry, unpainted rather than repaint it again. It's kind of weird that they're both, the two stories are different. So we obviously don't want to paint the third floor.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Can we bring back and restore the second floor?
Yep.
And or just decide to do nothing for a while until the economy picks up and John feels in a better position to reestablish this building as gorgeous as it is on the upper stories, to where it really should be. I think that's most of my comments for the ground floor. And again, let's have another, let's get together individually and have a more in-depth conversation about all that. On the backside, so the issue on the backside at Bedford Square is there was a previous application. In fact, I think two back in the early 2014, 2012 era. There was a building on that site at Bedford Square, a small 2.5-story, sort of residential, but it had been heavily modified building. And that the applications at that time, the demolition of that building prerequisite was based on an approved new building to occupy that site. So we got the demolition, but we didn't get the new building. And we're not sure, and you guys will have to tell us when we get into a meeting more, is sort of, the parking lot is not legal per se, and we don't think it's a C of O for a parking lot. I know LRC wouldn't have approved the demolition of a building to get a parking lot. And I think our biggest concerns there are sort of all around the board of sort of what you're doing with the wall and the trellis, and then the dumpster enclosure, and there's a piece of it, a gate, and there's another part it's missing. We're not sure what that means.
Right.
There's more information there that's sort of, that whole back area needs to be discussed as to a prior commitment to build a new building as an infill. And now we're not getting that, and we're getting an open patio with a dumpster. There's a lot of different things happening there that I think we need to talk about.
Okay, yeah, and I can bring some stuff to that the meeting that we all meet at together. But this layout is sort of predicated on the idea of putting in a future new building in this area. So that is why this is all wide open right now.
No, okay.
So that we're not ignoring the fact that the building does have to go there. So this brick pier is maybe meant to be a little more a part of the future of a new building. So where it says
Yeah,
open
so
lot,
that was sort of a mystery. So I'm glad you're kind of infilling the
yeah.
details.
So the idea would be to fill that in here. Now we're not proposing that under this proposal, the new building. So that's why I left it off. I mean, I maybe what I should do is sort of pencil that in, for lack of a better word, and show what the proposed new building would be there.
Right.
Not as part of this proposal. And, you may want us to go further than that. I don't know. But, that was the idea. This open lot area is the placeholder for the new
Yeah.
building. So,
I mean, for everyone's information, we've been in this position before years ago where demolitions are proposed. And the prerequisite or what we've always pushed for is if you're going to demo a building, give us a building. That we don't want to demo buildings in the historic district and get parking lots. That's detrimental to the historic district. So it's sort of a one for one. And we've missed that opportunity now. If it's coming back around, we want to have that conversation again. And then it's sort of, so as it stands on its own right now, looking at all this stuff, I guess I'm not hearing support from the LRC at this moment to approve this as is because of all these gaps and sort of, odd conditions. So I think we're more, there's a better chance of us coordinating efforts and supporting your efforts on the storefront than there are in the rear until we get more information and sort of come to terms with some of these issues. Yeah.
okay.
And I guess there's a bunch of questions that are outside our committee that maybe others on community council or on the call should ask as far as zoning. So you're changing a beauty salon into a food establishment. What does that mean for parking, required parking spaces? Have you handled that? You've got maybe mixed use. How are you merging the 3 properties together in one restaurant? All those kind of questions are outside the HRC, LRC.
Yeah, and just for the committee's understand, we did go to zoning before this and before the dam existed, and we did get permission to do this. We have our parking lined up, so we did that through basically through there's the existing parking lot next door, and I don't have a good site plan that shows that parking lot next door really, but that's in here. There's like a 30-some person parking area in here, and additional bike parking, etc. So we did get a variance for the parking for this. So,
Okay.
but not for we're still obviously very early on. This is really our first major step. I guess zoning was our first major step to see if we could do this without adding parking spaces in the back, because we want to eliminate this as parking. Where's the photograph? We want to eliminate this as a parking lot.
Yeah. I think we all do.
Yeah, we want that to be a nice outdoor dining area, and we don't want to have parking back there. So,
And we're sensitive to all that. I mean, personally, I've frequented John's restaurant. I like Urban Tap. I like John and the whole staff. We want to support the businesses and how you've had to adapt under these conditions. So I understand the real estate for an outdoor patio and its benefit to you, after the winter.
right.
But going into next year, but still there were previous moves made here faced with certain commitments that we lost the building, as unattractive as it was. Again, it's sort of, we don't want to tear down the historic district and get parking lots and patios. We want some new buildings to come back. So we just have that conversation before I think LRC could support this. Now I'm speaking for myself, and again, I'm inviting you to a meeting. I'll call you, or let's have a conversation, set up that meeting with the LRC committee members, so we get the full kind of committee input and everybody's views, and then we can.
Yeah, and I hope we did this in the right order. I mean, I think that I was told at HRC that this was the first step. I don't know.
Yeah,
probably should.
No, it is.
Gone to the
You're
LRC.
absolutely right.
Okay.
And my point is simply, it's the first time we see it.
Sure.
So we don't want to kind of go really in depth and have a 20 or 30-minute conversation back and forth with you and John about what to do here. But it's sort of just put things on the table as to where our initial thoughts are, and then we can work with you to craft something that could be approvable down at HRC. That's the whole goal of the process. So That's my,
Understood.
my comments in a nutshell.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. So I'll hand it over, Barbara, to anybody else, Southside Community Council or public that wants to make comments on this.
This is Mike Clark with the Community Council. Can anybody hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Mhm, yep.
Oh, hi. So we did meet with John, I'm going to say about a year ago, a few of us to look at the plans. It was a little different than what we're looking at now in the sense of the back, I believe. But we did talk about parking, and he was seeking, I believe the parking wasn't increasing that much, and he already had an arrangement for an alternative parking arrangement that he was going to seek an expansion of, I believe. Maybe you could speak to that. Has that been finalized then? This looks a little different. It looks like you're increasing the occupant load out the rear and this patio more so than it was on the previous.
Well, the patio really hasn't been designed yet, so I wouldn't
Yeah.
say that that's really the case exactly. We're still working on the design of the patio. And I think when we talked to you, Mike, we were actually showing the building in here. So, you know, we were taking some of that space out.
Right. But the building wasn't it more of a kitchen? I forget, but it wasn't like a large, sorry, it was like a year or so ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
I apologize. But yeah, so I guess if you could just let us know how that lands, because it seems like the scheme is changing enough that the parking might have to be re-looked at just to confirm that we're in, you know, apples to apples, and it hasn't changed from where we were talking about before.
Okay,
So,
yeah. Yeah,
if-
and yeah, it really, it shouldn't change. We'll get that on paper for you though, so you can see
Okay.
that it's really in keeping with what we were doing. So.
I think with that, we were okay with that. So the change of use was, you know, we felt like that was an appropriate use considering the location, and it made sense for the district. So I'm just speaking for myself, and I think the group that we met with you with. So that's all I have to add to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Barbara, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. Can we go back to the ghost sign that's on the
Yes.
side of the building? And sometimes it's dangerous to have just a little bit of knowledge, and that's, you know, what I have right now with the historic district guidelines. But I recall that at a few years back at 11th and East Carson, there a mural was placed over a ghost sign, and that did go to, you know, there was a 311. I believe it may have gone to the LRC, but to the HRC, and it had to be removed. And fortunately, the ghost sign was able to be recovered. So, you know, I'm not sure if the LRC wants to speak to that, but again, I think that's part of the historic district and needs to remain. And I'm not even sure if the guidelines permit any kind of painting being done on that brick. So I think I'm expressing a comment, but also need some guidance.
This is John speaking. Yeah, I think the LRC, I'm not speaking for all the members of the group, since this is the first time I've seen it as well. But I think I would personally oppose covering over a ghost sign. Just leave it there, and you know, it's, as Barbara pointed out, it is part of the history. So. But I would like to make a comment also about the facade. I am in agreement with Bob that it would be great to, if possible, once you do the selective demolition, is to bring the transom back. I mean, obviously it would help bring more natural light back into the restaurant. And maybe there will be other areas where you could put the decorative tile. Yeah, so that's kind of like all I have to say with the facade, except I'm assuming that the second door leads up to apartments.
It does, yeah.
Correct.
So obviously you wouldn't want to get rid of that. But if the possibility, as Bob pointed or mentioned, bringing the facade a little bit more forward would be great, give you again more visibility. Maybe with a slight recess for the door so that the doors just don't go out onto the sidewalk. But yeah, I mean, I think it would give you greater visibility to have, some glass out there in the front.
Mhm.
Just like it is at Urban Tap right now.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Kathleen with Southside Community Council. I was at the meeting with Mike a year and a half ago when we met with you guys as well. My question is, I know you guys were going to use the same kitchen for El Dorado as for Urban Tap. Now, with the expansion into the back and having the courtyard, will you be expanding your kitchen now as well, since you'll be having the seating in the back as well?
No, we wouldn't expand the kitchen into the new space at all. So we would still be using the exact same kitchen. The outdoor space would not be covered. It would just be summertime use only, or, seasonal use only. And it would more or less, as far as we're concerned, probably replace a lot of the indoor seating because, in the rules today, outdoor seating is allowed a little bit more. It's a little more flexible for the owner to arrange outdoor seating than it is indoor. But it would be permanent. So yeah, but it would not be an enlarged kitchen at all. Really, the interior of the space would be some seating and bathrooms, because we'll be adding quite a bit of additional bathroom space to this.
Thank you very much for that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone have any comments about, and again, with my limited knowledge of the historic district guidelines, I know there are sign issues. Any issues around the signs?
Tom McDonald has a comment in the chat, and he put, if anything, I would think one would want to see the ghost sign restored and the remainder of the side facade brick cleaned. Thoughts?
So Bob Russ here, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, Bob?
Okay, yeah, so I'm sorry I didn't address the signage. So yeah, in general, the guidelines allow a certain amount of signage for a business. So I would agree initially, at least our take is we would not want to repaint over the ghost sign and use that as an opportunity for this business to go beyond the district guidelines for signage. Only because we're very conscious of precedent. If we allow Urban Tap to take a ghost sign and paint on the side of this building, a sign in excess of what's allowed in the guidelines, then every other business down the district will want to do that. Now, the community can kind of discuss that, perhaps, and say whether they want more signage and more painting on the sides of buildings. I know there's some murals coming up to be discussed in the district in the future here. But generally, we have not encouraged additional signage and/or the painting of murals and signage in addition to what the business signage guidelines allow, which is something on the storefront and this projecting sign. So then on the projecting sign, it's just there are guidelines for the projecting sign. It has to be within a certain number of feet and letters of a certain size. In these drawings, at least, the Dorado signage on the sign board, while it's dimensioned at 18 inches, the letters are obviously bigger, but the guidelines state, 18 inches is the max. So shrink those letters down to 18 inches. And then the projecting sign is allowed, but it's such a crazy shape, I can't quickly ascertain whether within the 9 square foot rule, there's some kind of trigonometry Dave's going to have to to prove that that's within 9 square feet.
That's what
But
my
the shape
CAD
is
program's
fun,
for.
the design is fun. Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Put that in and tell us what your CAD program says, David.
Yeah, it's 9 square feet per side. So that's what it told me, at least, right? So
Okay,
yeah, that's the
okay.
intention. Is we're not proposing any signage beyond the size, and even that dimension. Somehow something happened there, but that 18-inch dimension is intended for that overall signage to be 18 inches tall. Those letters,
Yeah, that'd be appropriate.
and the projecting sign to be 9 square feet. So we're not looking for any variances on that or anything.
And it looks like it's in the right place. It's below the second floor sill and higher than a certain number of feet off the sidewalk so people don't mess with it. I don't know. Initially, both those little tweaks, would bring you into conformance. Generally, we only, there's another zoning code. It's not in the historic district guidelines that say it should only be a business name. Some of the extra stuff that people put in on their awnings and signs around the district with phone numbers and services and different things they do, is outside the neighborhood signage guidelines that are in the historic district guidelines, but there's some other zoning control on that, but we could talk about that again.
Mm-hmm.
There's no great objection on my part, at least, to what's being proposed here. It's fun. It's a matter of tweak it a bit to bring it within the guidelines rules. And yeah, go sign is sort of, again, that's a third sign that is not really in the district guidelines, is not permitted. So why would we allow you, just because you have a go sign, to put your business up there and over it? Why not? So save it and just leave it as is. But I'll let John and others make comments if they want on signage, but that's sort of my take initially.
Hi, Mike
Thanks,
McKay with the Community Council.
Yes, Mike.
I had while we're on that subject of the signs, I was curious if either that front sign or the hanging sign, would either of those light up?
They would not be internally illuminated. They would be externally illuminated. So they wouldn't be lit from inside, no.
And we have a spotlight on them or such.
Yeah, there'd be some sort of light on them. And there is actually a sign, a sign designer that's working on this. Then I would, I can get more detailed drawings on exactly how these would work.
Okay. The other question, and I don't know if anybody has the answer to this, about the ghost sign. What is the logic behind leaving the ghost signs as they are, rather than either try to recreate them, or I don't know, just leaving them like partially, and then you have to guess at what they said, 100 years ago. And is that the whole idea behind leaving them just the way they are?
I would think, and again, my knowledge base is limited, but I think it's the history behind it. They're worn, but
they're not meant to be legible. They're meant to be like the historic backdrop of a historic neighborhood. It's the character that you describe as character when describing a historic neighborhood. It's not, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yes, the problem sometimes, if you restore it, it can be confusing to the public. They might think that whatever that sign says, that there's a business there, and so it's confusing. So my thinking, and I think it's preferable, just to leave it as is. And maybe someone could do some research on it and, come up with a good story behind it. But
well, if they wanted to refinish the whole side of that building, they would have to go around the ghost sign and do whatever they had to. If, say, it needed repointed or something, they have to go around the ghost portion of it, I guess, right?
right, and there are people that can restore things so that they're sort of restoring them as is versus trying to pretty them up, but can maintain what's there. So there are specialists who can do that.
Okay. I know it's always fun to walk around and try to figure out what half of them say and what they were selling way back when. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, there was a great Tommy Tucker one on Carson Street, around 11th Street. That was great at one time, but that's gone now. So.
Oh, one other quick one, a cantina. What exactly is a cantina? Is that a fancy word for a restaurant?
Yeah, I think so. But John, if you want to, John, if you're still there, you can jump in there.
It's just a Mexican themed restaurant, traditional Mexican themed restaurant. So I gave some information to the folks over at Community Council whenever we met over a year ago. I'm working with Christopher Cook to develop a menu. He's been the chef at Cafe du Jour. He was at the Smiling Moose for a while. So, as far as, you know, price point and execution, stuff like that, I mean, I would say it's in the same range as what we're doing over at the Urban Tap. In response to the cooking and the kitchen question that we had from Community Council as well, we may do some cooking equipment outside to relieve some pressure off of that indoor kitchen over at Urban Tap, depending on volume, but that's not yet determined. I guess my final thing, I would just ask Bob and John when we could continue the discussion of the exterior of the building that is on Bedford Square. That's definitely something that I intend to do. And just to be 100% transparent, my intention was, and I don't know how feasible this is, is to somehow make a binding commitment, however that may be, which I already know the 1-for-1 whenever that building was that needed to be demolished, that, you know, a building needed to be put up in its place. My intention was, just in the current environment, was if I can have that building up, some design that's approved done by Dave, if I can have that building up within X amount of months before, after I get my permit to operate, whatever that total is. I mean, that's ultimately what I would try to do from a financial perspective. But again, I don't know if there's any way to make that a binding commitment, or if that's something that you guys would consider, to be able to have an approved building design that needs to be done within a certain time frame.
I'm not sure that we have that authority to be able to do that.
Yeah, Bob here. I'm with John. It's sort of outside the LRC. So the LRC is not making decisions for you. We're just advisory to help you get to a place where you could be approved by HRC. So the guidelines don't speak to that. It's been sort of an unspoken sort of gentleman's agreement that if there's going to be demolition in the district, that we're getting buildings, you know, back from a building that's being demolished and not parking lots and patios. And that would be our take in terms of advice. But John, we understand where you're at. You know, it's sort of like, there's been history here. So it's sort of like, okay, now where do we go from here under the current conditions? Another reason to kind of get you into a meeting with us so we can formulate a plan that maybe is palpable with HRC.
Yeah, I think
we don't know what their take would be. They may just say, yeah, fine, John, whatever, you know, and you'll just go downtown and present this, and they'll say, you know, we hear what the LRC is saying. Can we meet somewhere in the middle, or can we, you know, they'll make their own decisions. But our advice will be sort of, can we talk about this new building in the place of a building we lost, because that was the original. I believe that you had a certificate of occupancy for a previous project that, you know, the demolition was part of the C of A to get a new building. You know, I have a copy of that. That's kind of history, but now where do we go from here? Or our point of view is simply not to say that's all over, and we're just, you know, you may have, I don't know what the answer is. It's a good question. But there's a complication here with that in the sense that we lost a building. Can we get a building as part of this larger scheme, and what timeline? We can talk about it in more detail.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, my thinking is that those questions would probably need to involve HRC, since they are the ones that provided the certificate of appropriateness and had specific guidelines for the new construction. So I think it would need to be
Yeah.
So does anyone else have any additional questions or comments?
Nope.
Phil, is anyone as an attendee have their hand raised, or?
I don't see anything in the chat, and I don't see any raised hands.
Okay. I do have a question. And it's not going to be answered because someone there was a phone number and I didn't know who that was. And what we do, we need to understand who's attending these meetings to put on the city planning.
I think they're gone already.
Yeah.
There is one phone number left, 412.
That's Margie's.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Margie's. Yeah. Okay.
The other phone number was Liz Heidenreich. She had to jump off for another meeting.
Okay, good. That's good to know.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Yep.
In our original list then, Barbara?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
I
Okay.
have the list.
Great.
So, Phil, if you want to put the last slide up, we can move from Dave's screen to yours.
Sure.
I think it's the last two. I think there's two slides. Or is it the last one?
One before. Oh, yeah, this one.
Yeah. that
So
one.
with our next steps, I think you've heard that there will be more discussion, detailed discussion between the LRC and Dave and John. But if anyone on the call has additional comments, you can email them to info@southsidecommunitycouncil.org, and we will make sure that we respond or share with the LRC. So this project will be reviewed by the Historic Review Commission sometime in January or February. You're able to view those via Zoom. And you can also provide any additional comment by either emailing the Historic Review Commission, sending a letter to them, joining the virtual meeting, and making comment. And they do appreciate the comments. So if you go to the last slide, Phil. So it's listed in the first bullet here that you can go to our website for follow-up. And I apologize, we're working on our website. If you would like information about the dam and the projects that we've reviewed in the last 5 months, email me, and that at info@southsidecommunitycouncil.org, and I will provide that information to you. I believe 2 of our dams are up on YouTube, and it's the Southside Community Council's page. I have the others. So again, and I will have this one by this evening or by tomorrow. Again, sign up for our monthly newsletters to know what's going on through the Southside Community Council. And our last dam of the year will be December 17th. And we already have 2 presentations. And again, they involve the projects that will be going before the Historic Review Commission. So if no one else has anything to add, I want to thank you for your time and interest in the Southside community. So thank you and have a good evening. And for those of you that I won't see prior to Thanksgiving, which is probably just about everyone, happy Thanksgiving. And John, hope this was a good experience for you.
Yeah, I appreciate you leading it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you all for all your help. We'll be in touch with Bob and John to continue the process.
Yeah, thank you, David, and best wishes.
Thank you.
All
Good
right.
seeing you, David.
Good to see you. Is that Quaylin? Hi, Quaylin.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. Nice seeing you too.
Good to see you. Take care.
Take care. Have a nice holiday, everyone.
You too.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for everything, Phil.
Yeah, thanks
Thank you,
everyone.
Phil.